Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2024 release of The Last Amityville Movie. And good news, everyone. It is available for free to watch on Tubi, which is a free streaming platform if you're not familiar with it. So if this film sounds interesting to you, go ahead and hit it up. It is a low-budget independent film, which is always good to support. That said, I wasn't a big fan of this film, but I also didn't hate it. So, and I do feel like I need to make a disclosure. I do know the filmmaker, the guy who wrote and directed it, Josh Spiegel. He's not like a good friend of mine. I would say he is an acquaintance. I've, met him virtually, talked to him a few times. Seems like a great guy. He has a YouTube channel called Movie Timelines, which I'll link in my description, which is a really, really, really good YouTube channel, especially for people into horror. He does a lot of very cool videos that go very in-depth on a lot of nerdy horror stuff, especially his Dead Last series where he's ranking kind of crappy and good movies in different categories. That's a lot of fun. But anyway, just disclosing that. Also, someone who is in this film is a good friend of mine, Tom Aiello, but most people know him as your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, who also has a great YouTube channel that I will link in the description. Very underrated. I'm also going to link in the description the YouTube channel for Juiciest Slice, because I noticed he showed up in this movie a little bit, and another really underrated YouTube horror guy. So go ahead and check his stuff out as well. He does a lot of in-depth stuff that I honestly wouldn't have the patience to put the research and thought into what he does. It makes my brain hurt. So I'm glad that someone is out there doing that. But anyway, The Last Amityville Movie, written and directed by Josh Spiegel, who also did The Complex, Witching Hour, and Witching Hour 2. I have not seen anything by Josh. This is my first time watching one of his films and reviewing it. Synopsis. This is a really cool concept. I love the concept of this film. Basically, he takes his current existing YouTube channel and who he is as a person and works that into this Amityville movie, where he basically, on his YouTube channel, takes down bad movies. Like, he talks about how terrible bad movies are and different aspects of it, and how, kind of lambastes them to a degree. And he has talked before, I think at length, about the Amityville horror franchise, which from what I understand is one of the worst horror franchises out there. I say from what I understand because I've literally only seen the very first Amityville horror and this one. So I've seen the first one and the last one. And in between, I think there's like 41 other films or something, and I've heard mostly pretty terrible. Maybe someday I'll get to some of the other ones, but it doesn't really interest me that much as a franchise because I didn't even like the first film that much. I feel like it's okay, but if you want to watch a film like that, just watch Burnt Offerings with Oliver Reed in it, and it's way better. Same concept, way better done. But anyway, it's a thing. So basically, he ends up, oddly enough, getting stuck in an Amityville movie. So the film is very meta, and that's as much as I'm going to say synopsis-wise, because if the Amityville franchise interests you, I would say definitely check this out. If you've seen a few of the films or all of the films, and you know much about the franchise, I would say this film will probably play a lot differently to you than it does to me. Because, like I said, not having interest in that franchise. Also, it's a found footage film, and I really dislike found footage films. So I think my lower rating may also be reflecting some of my biases, although I do kind of try to take that stuff out. And like I said, there were some things I liked, so I will be talking about that as well. But the movie starts out making you think that the film is going to be much worse than it is. I will say that. That was an intentional thing. I thought that was really funny. That is one of many instances where Spiegel is winking at the audience. And I like how meta, how self-aware this film is. It is a horror comedy. And those moments of winking at the audience, I think they work pretty well. And I think they're also really good for kind of making people forgive certain things about the film that sometimes they're intentional, sometimes they're not as intentional. Being a low-budget horror film, you're not going to have the best acting. you're not going to have the best CGI in it, stuff like that. So I think making it a horror comedy plus making it meta really is a smart move, because it makes people naturally forgive a lot of that stuff and be like, oh, well, it's this type of movie. That's, this is obviously what you're going to get from it. So I think that was a smart move. The movie does a good amount of winking at the audience. I literally just said that. My apologies. As can be assumed for a low-budget independent movie, the acting is a mixed bag. Like I said, you don't get the best acting in pretty much any low-budget independent horror film. With this one, there are some people who you can tell have never acted before, which is fine, because it's low-budget horror, and literally there are people in it who have never acted before. But there are some people who do quite a good job in this. I think Josh does a pretty... Oh, sorry, I should say Spiegel, because I'm trying to be professional about this. Spiegel does a pretty good job, and I think a lot of it is he just kind of channels what he does for his YouTube channel. So he's just being the same kind of person that he is on there, which may be very close to who he is in real life, but I also don't fully know that because we're just acquaintances. But yeah. But it is a mixed bag. I will say right now, this is a good time for me to say it. My good buddy, Tom Aiello, Uncle Pete, a lot better job with the acting than I thought he would end up doing, because I know that he's not an actor. I know I don't think he has done any acting, at least not to my knowledge. And he's not like great in the film or anything, because, you know that hasn't been an actor before. But honestly, for like a first go at it, pretty good, really. The pacing isn't too bad for a found footage film. Now, this is one of my problems with found footage in general. If you've been watching my channel enough, you already know this. One of the main reasons I hate found footage films is because the pacing is inherently bad. With this, I think Spiegel does a pretty solid job of keeping things moving for the most part. And when he's not giving you extra portions of the story to kind of push things ahead, he is trying to give you some comedic stuff. Now, I say trying because I don't think all the comedy hits. I do think there are some moments that really do hit, and obviously that's kind of like a personal preference thing. Like, what do you find funny? But I think that some of the comedy may not have been to the level that he wanted. It certainly wasn't to the level that I personally wanted. But, like I said, there are those moments where I got it and I was just like, oh, okay, like this is actually pretty funny. Although my favorite moments that were kind of comedic were also those moments that were kind of like the winking at the audience, like being more meta. Because it's not only that they're funny, they're also like very clever. So there's another level to it, and I appreciate that. So the dialogue at times does feel pretty unnatural, unfortunately. Now, that is a combination of what is written and the acting chops of some people, because like I said, not everyone's great at acting in films like this, and you just understand it. So if you know what you're getting into with this film, you know what to expect. And again, with the way it was done, with the style that it is, how it's set up, a lot of people will just end up being like, that's fine. I totally forgive that. I know what I was getting into. There are a few comedic moments that hit pretty well. I already talked about that. I appreciate the incorporation of horror movie tropes, which will be something that's very enjoyable for nerdy horror folks like us, I assume. I did really kind of smile at a bunch of those moments where he's kind of obviously calling out things in horror movies that he should not be doing, but he does anyway. So those are some of the nice moments. There's an aspect I can relate to in this, where you're going through something stressful in life, but you still feel obligated to put out content, even at the detriment of your own mental health. So whether it was intended or not, Spiegel definitely put something in this film that really resonated with me, because literally a few years ago, I went through a really horrible, anxiety-riddled and depressive state, and I kept making review videos for my YouTube channel because I felt obligated to do it. And there are literally videos you can find where I am starting to actually go through a panic attack, and I just try to power through it. So again, I don't know if that was an intentional thing, but that is something that really stuck out to me, that kind of spoke to me in a very different way than it's going to hit most audience members. But it was a little personal for me, so that was interesting. There's a CGI part in this that I thought was actually very fun and funny. It has to do with like a Ring camera. So that's as much as I'm going to say. I'm not going to spoil anything with it. That was probably one of my favorite surprise moments of the film. I thought it was, like I said, fun and funny. For the most part, the CGI looks very wonky. It's not good CGI, but again, you forgive it because of what the film is. Does a great job setting that up. The film is too long for what it is, I do think. It's like an hour and 35 minutes with credits. I think that's way too long. I understand that there is kind of this feeling that in order to try and get anywhere with these low-budget independent films, a lot of times you need to have them around 90 minutes in length. I am someone who just doesn't want that. But I also think that this one gets a little bloated just because of the fact that it's found footage. So part of me saying I think it should be chopped down may be because of the found footage aspect, and some people who are really into found footage may be like, oh no, the length is totally fine with me. So obviously all just my personal opinions on this. Once the real point of the film is revealed, it's a pretty solid payoff in my opinion. I was going towards rating it lower than I'm actually going to rate it a little bit until the end portion really kicked in and you get that explanation of what this entire project was really about and what Spiegel's really trying to say and do here. And it's interesting and it's fun and it's funny. And again, going back to what I said in the beginning, I like the concept a lot here. I think the concept was great. The script is okay, in my opinion. My apologies. It went further than I actually expected it to at the very end. Like the very end portion, I did not expect it to go that far because previously in the film, it doesn't feel like it goes that far. And so it felt like there was a limitation budgetarily to where he was going to be able to go. And it was surprising to see that he went further at the end. And I like that he did what he did. So, into it. It's a fun concept to incorporate an existing YouTube channel into a film that ends up being found footage. Again, going back to concept being great. It does feel like a product of the pandemic as well, and that makes it very relatable to basically everyone, so I think that's another smart thing. It doesn't take place during the pandemic, it takes place during another pandemic. But it does feel to me like, at the least, Spiegel started working on this during the pandemic. So, just saying. This film is not made for me. I don't like found footage, and I've only seen one Amityville movie other than this. So, you can kind of take what I'm saying with a grain of salt for that reason, if you are a person who likes the Amityville franchise or is interested in it, and if you are a person who is either okay with found footage films or really likes them. So, just throwing that out there. So, me personally, out of 5 stars, half stars, and play, I'm going to give it a 2.5-star rating. I was very much in between. I was going to go 2, but then the ending happened, and I was like, you know what? That kind of moved the trajectory up a little bit more for me, so I'm going 2.5. I'm very conflicted on it. There are things I really didn't like about it. There are things I really did like about it, so right down the middle. So shout out to Josh Spiegel. Shout out to Tom Aiello. Shout out to Juiciest Slice. I don't know your actual name. I actually, I could have looked that up in the credits, but I didn't. I'm sorry. My bad. But their channels will be linked in the description. Definitely check all of them out. They all have wonderful YouTube channels. And subscribe to all of our channels if you want to help us out. We are little guys trying to just do what we like, basically. You can hit the thumbs up on all our videos. That will help us all with the YouTube algorithm situation. And you can hit the notification bell button on all our channels. Then you will know when we're all putting up content. So, honestly, if you subscribe to all of us, you can have a lot of good content coming your way every single week. I'm just saying, consider it. But anyway, thanks everyone for checking this out. If you want to put some comments down there, go ahead. And we can talk spoilers in the comments. That's totally fine. But until next time, keep it brutal.